Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Thank you for joining me again. And oh my God, I'm so happy to be back. And today we have a very special episode because it's drum rolls, Black History Month. And yes, I'm very excited to be doing this episode because I have been thinking about this for a long time. So I'm excited to be finally doing this and to be doing this with the person I'm doing this with because she is amazing.
Thank you.
So today I have with me in the studio Sapphire. Oh my gosh, the energy here is amazing. Yes, I love to start with this kind of high energy. Oh my gosh, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm excited to be here. We love Ruth.
Oh,
So it's gonna be fun.
oh my gosh.
You know, I'm doing well. This is Ebony Ball Day, so we're excited for that.
Yeah.
Excited for a lot of little things that's about to happen. So
Yeah.
doing good.
That's good. And for our listeners who are not Bowdoin students, could you explain what Ebony Ball is?
So yeah, Bowdoin students. I think it's like BSU and some other groups of people. I know Shai ran it last year, but it was really cool. It's just a ball. It's a ball for Black students, and it's fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's good food.
That's very important. Food,
very important. Yeah.
Yes, that's good. And how has your semester been in general?
I think semester was good. Yeah, studying as always. I think this is my most intense semester at Bowdoin, but we got it. It's
yeah,
fine.
You got this. Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. But yeah, I think with the work and the stress and everything, comes growth. So
Yeah.
I definitely think it's been intense, but it's been good. So today we're going to be talking about how our cultures / backgrounds / upbringings affect the way we take care of our health. And I definitely think this is a very important conversation because sometimes we can be like, oh, to be healthy, you need to do this, exercise, and do this, and do that, and do that. But there's an element of upbringing, of background that really influences how we even approach health in the first place, right? Like, why do we eat the things we like to eat? Why do we view ourselves the way we view ourselves, right? I feel like that element is very important because if we don't tackle it, then we might just be going around in circles. You might be working on how you view self-care, but just keep going back to the same place over and over again because you're not like addressing an underlying issue that you might have. So today we are going to be talking about that, and we're both going to be sharing our stories. So I am inviting you into our world to listen in and to see how your stories might be similar or different from ours. You know, how maybe your upbringing has probably influenced how you see mental health and physical health, or how it has helped you become a better version of yourself. So I hope that you enjoy this episode because I know we are going to do that, and I hope that you send in your stories too. So Sapphire, for those who don't know you, could you give us a brief introduction on where you're from and where you grew up?
Yeah, I'm Sapphire Hall. I'm a wellness intern here at Bowdoin, so I work for wellness and counseling. And I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, but grew up in the United States and have lived all over the East Coast in like 5 states. So I feel like I have a pretty interesting background, pretty interesting life moments.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's very interesting because you're from Jamaica. Like, you were born in Jamaica, but then you moved to the US. But I am from Nigeria, and I grew up in Nigeria. So I'm really curious to see how much our backgrounds are similar or different and how that has affected our health. So my first question would be, how has coming to college like helped you understand where you stand in terms of your health? How has coming to college helped you understand how health is on a personal level?
That's really interesting question. I feel like coming to college forced me to understand who I am more without the context of like my family. I feel like in my family I'm the person who is I feel like my time is always allocated to someone else.
Yes.
And this was a time in my life where I had like all the time in the world for myself. So it was about figuring out what I like to do, who I am, where I want to go. Yeah, and I think mental health wise, at first it was really necessary for my mental health.
Yeah.
I think now that I'm in it and have experienced it, it's still a beautiful thing, but now I'm forced to figure out and deal with real issues that I have.
Yes.
And at some point, like in my collegiate career or in like my youth, I do want to really explore that as much as possible.
Yeah. I see that. And you mentioned that you're a wellness intern here at Bowdoin. Why did you choose to do that?
Yeah, okay, so I worked in a prison for my first year internship was working at Long Creek Juvenile Detention Center.
Oh, wow.
And I was curriculum coordinator there and work with the students to help with mental health things through art and literacy. And so even though that was completely different demographic than obviously like college students here at Bowdoin, I realized that everyone needs like a little bit of help.
Yes.
Like whether they say it or not, no matter how much they're thriving.
Yes.
And I noticed that a lot in that situation, which I can't talk too much about on, but transitioning back into Bowdoin, I feel like I was looking at my peers, especially especially junior class. They look so sad.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, what? Like, this can't be. And I know that Bowdoin is not the ideal place, especially if you're a student of color. So I really wanted to be able to bring some joy. And I think Kate Nicholson really wanted to do the same thing. And yeah, so since we had similar missions, it was important for us to like go on that journey together.
Yes.
So since me and her like kind of were having lunches in the summer since I was living here and talking, she wanted to reach the certain demographics that weren't going to some of her events.
Yes.
And I wanted to figure out why certain demographics weren't going to some of her events. And I think I've realized that wellness for students of color looks very different than wellness for the white students.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And for those who don't know Kate Nicholson, she is the assistant director for wellness here at Bowdoin. And she was on the podcast twice. We spoke about sleep. So,
okay. Cool.
Yes. So, that's really interesting. It's very similar to why I'm doing Blooming Daily, because I also want to address issues in health and wellness. And I think it's really interesting that both of us noticed something, and then we said, oh, how can we provide how can we attend to this need? How can we come in to make things better? How can we make things happen? How do you think your background in general influenced that? Could you share a bit of like how growing up was for you in terms of health and wellness, and how it's influenced the turn you took with wellness here at Bowdoin?
Yeah, definitely. Sure. I think growing up here, I think there's like a couple layers to it. I would say the first thing is I come from a very intense culture.
Yeah.
And my culture, as beautiful as it is, has some real flaws, and they don't talk about mental health. And the Jamaican culture is aggressive. Like it is a rough culture, and I felt like I was not a rough kid. I'm very. If anyone knows me, I'm very like calm. I've always been very chill.
She is. She is very calm.
And like, I definitely used to get into a bit of trouble for little things, but like, again, I was not a rough kid, and I think having rough approaches to a non-rough kid causes trauma.
Yes.
And like, we don't like to define certain things as trauma. Trauma has to be like this serious thing, but like, it does cause trauma. And so I feel like in my youth I had experienced that a lot of that. And then I find that there's this thing that most immigrants do. They compare their experience to yours and tell you how you can never handle something like what they went through, or what they went through is much harder and you should be grateful. And that's true. We can say that's true, and I can respect that for what it is. But I think what it does is it causes people, especially, I think immigrants, black students, like really people of color, to not think their issues are serious.
Yes.
And like, you should think your issues are serious. If you're constantly sad, or if you're not feeling well, or whatever the case may be. So I think, as much as I did have like a cool childhood, and I respect my life for what it is, and it got me here, I use this time of my life to redefine who I want to be and how I want to treat people moving forward. And I think, not to talk too much about like my family dynamic in great detail, but I think my journey has been also very helpful for my mom and like my sister's relationship.
Yeah.
And their relationship looks completely different because we're 7 years apart, so things were different. So I think my demeanor and how I've chosen to live my life has helped inspired a little bit of change in my immediate family, and I hope that it can inspire a little bit of change for anyone here at Bowdoin, and anyone here who's going into their career and trying to figure out who they are.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And when you spoke about how for like immigrant families, sometimes children get their experiences compared with their parents. I totally feel that, because I feel like not just for immigrant families, it definitely happens back at home in Nigeria, where it's like, oh, you're complaining this. In my time, we walked 100 miles. Wow, now you even get to like use the bus and things like that. I think it's very valid. And while their experiences are, and we're very valid, right? Our experiences are just as valid, and it's really important to acknowledge that the fact that we're also not walking 100 miles doesn't mean we should not be able to speak up about the things we're going through in this present moment, right?
Yeah.
Because it's also super important. So I definitely get that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes when those conversations are had often in that light of comparison, people close up, people don't talk about them anymore, and it's just very harmful. And do you have anything to share in light of that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I feel like, at least for me personally, in my teenage years, I feel like I began to implode because I didn't really have anyone I felt super comfortable talking to. And I think even now, I find myself doing that. I feel like I find myself in my head a lot, and it becomes really hard for me to interact the way I want to interact with people. And that's just imploding. It's thinking about I think a part of it is like I have so much pressure, I feel. But beyond the pressure, I think I'm not fully a whole person at this moment in time. And so it's very serious that I take time for myself and be alone and not overextend myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think all these are just really good points, because sometimes we don't really think about these things when we think about wellness. We think about wellness, and almost every time we're only thinking about the gym, about food and all of that. And while those are, in fact, very important components of health and wellness, they're not the only things. And sometimes when we focus only on those things and not on the other things, we might just keep like fighting a battle that we're not winning and wondering why we're not winning, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's totally important, and you're making so many valid points. And now I want us to break into two major categories, because I mean we could go on and on and on and on this topic, but because for the of the sake of time, and because, you know, Sapphire and I are not experts, I want us to break this into two major things now: physical health and mental health, right? We've spoken kind of broadly on these things, but I'd like us to like touch some specific things, like food and access to resources and all of that, and how it has and continues to affect our health. And so with physical health, I want to start with, you know, what I already said, food, right? So how was it like for you growing up? Like feeding habits, access to fresh food, the resources, because all of that really play a key role. For example, if we're saying, okay, you need to eat a balanced diet, right? But if you're in a home where balanced diet is practically impossible, you know, how does that come into place? I'm curious to hear how it was for you growing up.
So I'll answer the question first. For me, it was a little bit different than probably most people's experience.
Mm-hmm.
I have immune disease, and so a big part of my wellness, or not wellness, I don't like using that word for certain things, so we'll talk about that later, I guess. But a big part of my health was eating appropriately. Yes. So as a child, I ate ital, and eating ital in Jamaica is like eating as fresh as possible. Typically, like things, I guess here in the United States, it'd be like organic.
Yes.
Lots of vegetable, things like that. Even if I used to eat fish too as a kid, sometimes, and that didn't have like a bunch of seasonings and stuff. So I did that for a very long time, and then I ended up stopped because I saw that I was getting better and could eat a little bit more food, eat things like rice, eat things that I wasn't eating before. So for me, I grew up with good eating habits. Mm-hmm. And even though it sometimes can be hard, I can always revert back to those eating habits. I think eating, and then also as a child, I was always active, always doing something, playing soccer, basketball, something.
Very nice.
So like that for me as a kid is not something I experienced a lot because of the conditions of my culture. We're Caribbean, and a lot of our food is naturally fresh, and a lot of the places that we lived, we could somehow find that food. It is important to eat clean. It is important to go to the gym and work out your body, and those are things that I have definitely neglected a little bit in college. I don't consider that wellness, though.
Oh, why? Why not?
I feel as though we use the word wellness very loosely, and you have to drink water.
Yeah.
To survive. Mm-hmm. After a couple of days, you're going to pass out.
Yeah.
That's not wellness. Like, you need to do that to live a whole life. And I try not to define those things as wellness, because those are things that you may not like to do, that you must do to survive. I think the way I define wellness is not the things that you have to do to live, the things you want to do to live. The time that you take for yourself to do whatever. And my friend Witherspoon put that in my ear too, and it really kind of reshaped how I think about what is wellness. And I feel like that has been the constant conversation between Kate and I, but I think I finally kind of found like a true answer of like, where are we? Where is wellness? What is that?
Yes.
And for certain groups and demographic, things like meditation and yoga and all those things are wellness as well. Things like massages are wellness. We're finding that that's not what students of color are feeling, are wellness to them.
Yes.
But eating healthy and working out are not wellness. You must do them. And I think when you operate in the idea that they're optional, you're putting your life at risk. They're not optional things. And you should do them.
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting point. And we're going to come back to the two categories we mentioned, right? But before we go back to them, I wanted to like continue with this conversation of wellness, because I think it's interesting that you said that. So are you saying there's this like difference between health and wellness in a way that makes it seem like for health you have to do these things, but for like items of wellness they can differ for each person?
This is my personal opinion. I personally think so. You can be with someone who's very fit and very unhappy. And you can be with someone who is very out of shape and very happy. So I don't think they correlate in the way that people think they correlate. They obviously have correlations.
Yes.
But I don't think that one equals the other. And sometimes they overlap. Sometimes people love to work out, and that is their form of wellness. But that's something they chose to do because they love to do that thing.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that just because you don't like to work out means you get to not work out. You got to work out.
Yeah.
So that's not your form of wellness. Now you need to go find that. But you don't omit that activity because you don't like it. And we do this all the time. We do this with schoolwork. You don't like doing schoolwork. I never met someone who truly likes it. They're lying.
Are you sure?
I think so. I'm
oh my
like
God.
200% sure.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
You got to do your schoolwork though.
Yeah.
And you turn in your assignments on time because you care about your GPA. That's not wellness. Like the gratification that you get from doing schoolwork may help your wellness, but it is not wellness. So I do like to separate them in that way. Some people may disagree with me, and that's fine. We could talk about it over lunch.
Yeah.
Over dinner or something.
Yeah.
But I think that people should start finding the thing, I would say positive thing that makes them happy. Right?
Yes.
You can go out drinking every weekend. That is not a positive thing that makes you happy. So finding where that is, that's different from your norm, is very important. I had a conversation with this guy not too long ago. We had like dinner, and I was telling him about pottery. Like, maybe something you might like to do is pottery. Like, it's something that is separate from your everyday things that you need to do for you to survive.
Yeah.
But it is a positive thing that makes you happy. I think everyone should have one of those.
Yes.
At some point.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a very interesting nuance you're bringing to this, because a few episodes ago, we spoke about, we didn't fully speak about, but of my guests spoke about dimensions of wellness. So she spoke about, I think, the 7 dimensions of wellness. So I think this is an interesting nuance. And so to our listeners, I think this is a very good topic to do research on. To do the research on those 7 dimensions of wellness and put it side by side with all Sapphire has said, because I think there's a lot of nuance to this. That's the reality. It's not black and white,
it really
you know.
Isn't.
So it's there's, just like she said, sometimes they don't directly intercept, and sometimes they do. Sometimes it's a whole lot. Wellness is a lot.
It's a lot.
It is a lot, and that's just the reality. But step by step, one step at a time. Because if you try to do it all at once, then it can be very overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, like I have to eat this and I have to do this, but I have to find this. But
I agree, and I would say, like, to combat that overwhelming feeling, it's maybe write it down.
Yes.
What are the things you have to do? Like, for sure, things that in your head are not optional. And a lot of students here at Bowdoin, it might be your schoolwork or something.
Yeah.
And then the things that you should do, but you maybe aren't doing. For a lot of students here at Bowdoin, it might be working out and eating healthy. And then the thing that you do for fun that you really like to do, that makes you happy. And the thing that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Outside of those accumulation of things. And see if you actually have any of that.
Yes. So please, just like she said, definitely write these things out, because even if they don't even feel overwhelming, I think writing them down just helps.
Yeah, I think so.
Overall. Yeah. So definitely. So wow. Oh, we got here from food.
From food.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. But it's very interesting that you mentioned that for you it was a bit different, because so back home, it's very interesting to speak about this, because different people come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So my experience was not everyone's experience, right? But I was speaking about this to someone today, that I definitely think growing up I was exposed to fresh foods in a way, because I think back home produce was like such a big thing. Like, you go to markets and then you see vegetables outside, and then you see fruits and all of that, right? And then coming to the US, I saw a ton of packaged stuff. Oh my goodness. Yeah. What isn't packaged? Like, what really is not packaged here? And then coming to the US was when I saw a lot of organic, inorganic. This, like, one type of vegetable could have like 4 different prices, because they're like, it has varying levels of like freshness and all of that. So it was very interesting, because back home it wasn't like that. And I think eating fresh food was relatively affordable. I say relatively because affordable is different for everyone. And I say that because you could say, oh, I have this amount of money and I really want to buy this fresh food and that fresh food. It was like, was more accessible than I realized it was, because you didn't have to spend so much, right? I mean, now things are getting really expensive, but I definitely think that, like, growing up, I was exposed to like fresher food. And then coming to US, I realized, oh my goodness, like, if you're not careful, you can just be living off like processed food, right?
You definitely can. And that's something that my friends and I talk about so much. Like, how, unless you go to the dining hall, most of the time you're eating like, it's not real food.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really easy to do that here in a way that it is not easy to do even in like Jamaica. Like, I was just in Jamaica for the Christmas break, and my family so we have this thing called festival, Sapphire and I, and then we had like fish and crab and sides of vegetable for like 11 people, and it was $160 US. Fresh fish, fresh everything.
Wow.
So, like, food insecurity is really bad, and it it is affecting people's wellness.
Yes.
Because they're not getting what they're supposed to get nutrition wise.
Yes. Wow. Yes, that was it on food. And just like we said, there's a lot of nuance to this that we just can't possibly cover, on one episode. So yes, this is something to definitely reflect on as you go about your day, right? Like, why are you eating what you eat, and how is your background or your culture affecting what you eat, right? And if you could change it, would you change it, right? So yes, the next thing on my list is availability of things like gyms, parks, healthcare facilities, because those affect our physical health, right? If you're in a place where maybe you didn't have a gym in your community, you probably didn't work out, or like parks, right? Because I feel like, for example, in probably wealthy neighborhoods, there are parks. There's a place for like swimming pool, there's a basketball court and all of that. Right. How was that for you growing up?
For me growing up, I feel like I always stayed relatively active. I started with swimming. Well, growing up, we always lived by the ocean. So my mom would always take me to the beach. She didn't have a car. So I'm, I guess, a beach baby. And I kind of stayed a beach baby until I moved to New York. And then when I left, I resumed back to my beach baby. So I grew up near the ocean, and I feel like I was constantly near the ocean. I played a lot of soccer, played a lot of basketball. And then in high school, so there was this, my mom worked at this gym. I got into wrestling in high school.
Oh.
But my mom worked at this gym, and they were giving out free lessons for haircuts. And my mom is a hairstylist. So she would cut all the boys' hair, and I would go to like this wrestling practice.
Wow.
And this started like sixth grade. And then in high school, like, I took it really serious. And that was a good time for me to, again, very soft demeanor child. That was a time for me to be allowed to be aggressive. So I did get to, work out. I would say coming to college, it's been really hard. I haven't really quite found my balance here, and I'm not like on a athletic team. So I find myself not prioritizing some of the things that I do need to prioritize.
Yeah.
And it does affect me. I feel like a little bit more tired than I would. And like, yeah, so I think a big part of my journey in college is getting back to that space. And I do surf here. I've also surfed since like 5th grade or 6th grade. No, I'm lying. I'm lying to you guys. I've been surfing since 9th grade consistently. And I got into it because, again, I was at the beach a lot, and I saw a lot of people do it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. For me, surfing, I really love surfing. That's what I'm doing this summer, teaching surfing.
Ooh.
In Sierra Leone.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's become a big part of my life. The reason I haven't really immersed myself as much in the past couple months is because the culture around surfing here is really bad. So I've been fortunate in the food and physical piece.
Yeah.
However, it is very hard to get those resources. And what I've realized about the United States compared to anywhere else I've explored is that food insecurity for marginalized communities and access to proper like things like gyms and stuff like that is really bad. And it's bad on purpose, and that's so sad. It's so sad because if people of color had access and people who are poor had access to these things, they would do so much better.
Wow, when you said it's bad and it's bad on purpose, I was like, oof. I feel that. I definitely feel that, And for me, it's interesting because, again, my experience isn't everyone's experience. But I definitely think that like gyms, I feel like they probably are still, gyms are like, gym memberships are not cheap, you know.
They're not cheap.
Gym memberships are not cheap, right? So, you know, if you live in a low income community, you really, like, literally need money to eat. So, like, then you're going to pay for gym membership, right? So, it definitely was not a popular thing. And I feel like these days, you know, Gen Zs and all of that, like, a lot of people are getting gym memberships and all of that. But, like, 10, 15 years ago, it definitely was not. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm just saying, like, 10, 15 years ago, it was so much harder to be like,
it definitely was. And I feel like too, because at least for what I've noticed about like being from Jamaica and like that being my culture is that there's not an emphasis on that. Because it's so embedded in the everyday life. There's like, you don't need to work it out because it's hot and like you're walking everywhere or something like that. So whenever you come to these moments of leisure or come to environments like Bowdoin where things are so accessible and food is so accessible, all these different things, you don't prioritize that because you never had to.
Yes.
And then you just find yourself like out of shape out of nowhere. So I have noticed that. I think from a cultural standpoint, which is going to be a little bit different than other people's experiences.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely true. Because I remember like high school having to like walk long distances like home, right? And just like you said, that feels like workouts on its own, right? So like I didn't have to like work out for me to maintain like a particular like shape, you know, like I didn't have to go to the gym to do that. But then coming to Bodhi and I don't have to like walk as much, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to like shift my priorities in such a way that it accommodates me like working out and all of that. So it's very interesting to see how like I just automatically didn't have to work out as much in quotes, right? Because like my day-to-day life already included my workouts in it.
Exactly.
Right? Just morning, by night time, I had already gotten the equivalent of like a full day's workout by the time I'm done coming back from school and all of that. So I think it's really interesting how like our background shaped the way we see things like that, you know. Like, oh, going to the gym. Oh, why do you have to go to the gym when you've already walked so much today on that very hot sun, right? So yeah, that's, oh my gosh, that's very, very true. And I really wonder like how it is for other people, you know, how how it has been like. So if you're listening to this, we are really, really curious to hear how it has been for you. So you can definitely like tweet and tag us on social media, or honestly send an email, because we're very curious to hear how your experience has been like. Oh wow, I can't believe.
And then I have something, sorry, I think too, you know what my mom and aunts and everyone always says, even though like Jamaica in particular is in really bad condition right now, people are happier. Like there's more life there, there's more energy there, and I think it's because of some of those like components regarding food and like health. And again, like I personally separate those from overall wellness, but like that itself is contributing to the happiness despite some of the conditions. Which is something that you really don't see here in the United States. They really strip people of color and Black people in particular from being the best they can possibly be. But I feel like Black Americans here still continue to do really amazing things.
Yes. So I definitely agree. I mean, yeah, Black excellence is definitely a thing. It's like amazing to see. Yeah, definitely amazing to see. And so we're going to be moving quickly to mental health. Wow, I cannot believe how much time we took on the physical health. No, like it's because I feel like just like we said, there's just so much nuance, and it's really hard to just run through these things, right? Because then we would only be scratching the surface. And
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even said so much, and see how much time has gone, right?
Yeah.
So just to show how much nuance and how much complexity wellness and health and all of this has. So so for mental health, two things that I really want us to talk about is the conversation around mental health and the access to facilities for mental health. And so I'm really curious to hear how the conversation about mental health has been for you, like growing up, like in Jamaica and here in the US, because I feel like we are definitely going to have similar stories. And now that we're both like college students, how we think the conversation, how we think we're taking the conversation. Yes.
I feel like it really wasn't a discussion. It really wasn't a thing. I feel like things happen and then you don't really address them. We don't talk about them. It's just, it happened. You got over it. We move on. And we do better as we go on. And I think it's good because that's forced me to have like a mindset where if there's an issue, I find a solution and I move on. But I don't take time to see how those issues may have affected me. And so I don't think there was any of that in our household. And I feel that for me, I'm a person who wants my feelings respected.
Yes.
And I think as I've moved on to my collegiate career, I've made that very clear among my family, among my peers, that I really have a low tolerance for certain treatment.
Yes.
Because those things affect me. It may not affect other people. Everyone's different. But those things affect me and I don't tolerate them. And so I put up a certain standard for that. And I think that's been one way I've protected my mental health. I also think, really protecting yourself from some of the conversations you have.
Yes.
And some of the, things you watch and things you listen to. I think all of those contribute. I'm not a saint. I don't listen to gospel music. But, I do. If I'm watching a movie or something, I love scary movies. But if I'm watching a movie and I'm like, this is not sitting right with me, I'm going to turn it off.
Yeah. And
so kind of managing how certain things throughout your day, certain things that you consider normal, how they're making you feel. Say you smoke a lot. If once you're done from your high, you're not feeling good, you're feeling sad. You should stop.
Yeah.
That's how addiction forms. So just little things like that. I've reevaluated, but the most important thing for me is I've reinforced the respect of my boundaries. And when my boundaries aren't being respected, I pivot. And that's what that is. Yeah.
That's really good. I really like the statement you've reinforced, like your boundaries, because boundaries are super important.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Because if you don't have them, then people are just going to keep like coming into your space over and over and over again, and you're going to feel like you're struggling all the time.
And I notice it here too, like, again, I'm a metalhead. I hear a lot of different conversations, and it's just really crazy, like how people talk about other people, how people treat other people. So I take it really seriously, and I've heard a lot of interesting commentary because of it, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And interesting because for me, mental health, just like you said, it wasn't really a conversation. And I think it's probably not just a function of like where I grew up, but just a function also of the time, because I feel like the conversation on mental health really started becoming so important in recent years. And then the pandemic was a huge one that really made us think about like mental health. So I definitely think it wasn't so much of a conversation. And I think even up to now, back at home, like everyone is trying to figure out how to address mental health and say it in such a way that it's not like it's not complaining, but it's also like acknowledging like what people might be going through, right? So I feel like there's just so much nuance to this that even as someone who is like into health and like researching all of this, I feel like I'm constantly having to reevaluate like, oh, when like self-care, for example, when is this self-care or when is it just like stepping on others like to like get something for yourself, you know, like you know, there's just so much nuance to all of this. So yeah, the conversation of mental health wasn't a big thing, and I think, I mean, now we're making progress, but there's still a lot we need to address, and there's still so much we're understanding. Those of us who are like Gen Zs and the older generations, not even the older generation, but older generations, because I think everyone is trying to figure out what this really means and how to really address it. So yeah, and then this now leads us to the access to healthcare mental health facilities, because if there weren't even conversations in the first place, how would there be facilities for that?
Yeah. You know, I think that Black communities in particular have always relied on religious counsel for mental health, and I think that's a good start. But I believe in professional. This is my opinion, but I believe that professional care is also very important.
Yeah,
and I think the issue with professional care here in the United States is that they demonize mental health and they demonize issues that people may have, which scares them. And that happens here too at Bowdoin a lot. So you find a lot of students of color who don't want to go to, you know, the counseling services because they're afraid they're going to want to send them home. Things like that. And they can afford that. But I feel like if you can find yourself a really good counselor, it's really important that you take it seriously. I haven't explored counseling, even though I work for counseling and wellness services.
Oh my gosh.
But I do think it is important. And I think that when you have someone to talk it out with who understands you, it's important. And I think that layer of professional training is helpful because they know how to actually respond to your issues in a way that maybe like the church and maybe like your best friend may not know how to do. And I'm not saying don't talk to them or whatever. You should if they're your comfort place. But I think that I think more access to Black psychiatrists and Black psychologists is really important, and that's what I've been shooting for at Bowdoin, which they're not giving me, but whatever.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Those are really good points, because having this access are really important. And you know, interesting story. So last week, what week were we? Okay, yes. So last week I was on a call with like one of my mentor, my new mentor, because I got paired for like the Black students. There was this whole mentorship peer, so I got paired with a Black alum, and one of the things she told me to do was to explore therapy options at Bowdoin. And I remember that day on the call when she was like, "Do you know like the therapy options at Bowdoin?" I was like, "What?" I was like, "Sir, excuse me." And I remember my first instinct was to be like, therapy? Oh, I don't need therapy, right? I'm like, therapy? What was that? What's that? Yeah, but she was like, you should go check the therapy options, right? Yeah. And because she was like, she believes that everyone at least once in their life needs to like go in for therapy, you know? And I remember being like, what?
You know, it's so funny. I feel like, again, these things are like so weaponized, but so to put like therapy in another conversation, I guess, or context. When I was younger, my mom used to make me do tutoring Anytime she could afford tutoring, she would pay it out. And mind you, like, we didn't have money, so that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And my mom said tutoring is preventative care. It is not like you shouldn't have a tutor when you're failing. You should have a tutor before you fail.
Yeah.
And so that's how I think of like therapy.
Wow.
Like, it is not when you like are on your mental breakdown. Like, it is for you to not get to that point. And I think here, I think really everywhere across the Black diaspora, it's thought of as like, oh, that's for crazy people. Whenever they start getting crazy, but anyone can get to, anything can break anyone at some point. Like the littlest things can take over your mind, and I do feel that therapy is the cushion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that analogy so much because it's so true. Like,
Yeah.
I remember like being like, oh, why? Like, But then, like, after that, I was like, wait, that makes a lot of sense. I know this. Like, I know that it's important, but right in that moment, like, the first thing that came to my mind was like, therapy? Oh, why didn't I have to, like I'm
what
fine.
do you mean?
Yeah, like, I'm fine. So it's very interesting that we have these things in our subconscious when we're like, oh, therapy, what do you mean? Like, I'm fine. Da, 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 da. So, yeah, I definitely think that these things are really important, and sometimes just we don't think of them this way just because of how we grew up hearing the word or like associating that word and all of that. So I think this is super important, and I think that more discussions definitely need to be had because, you know, just one discussion is not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I am so glad that we're doing this because we have to do something and start somewhere, you know. And I think this is a step in the right direction. Just talking about this and addressing this and even calling it for what it is, you know, or like sharing our stories, because that's one thing we definitely want to do at Blooming Daily. Share these stories and see how they relate to each other or how they differ from each other and all of that. So, yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Sapphire, thank you so much. This is so good. Do you have any final words for this episode?
Yeah, I think that you all are really great, and you all are really amazing people, and you will get to your goal. And trust yourself, love yourself, respect yourself, do what you know you're supposed to do, eat healthy, and go work out and do your schoolwork or do your job, but know that your life is much more than that.
My job.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Sapphire, and thank you to our listeners at Bowden, outside Bowden, because I know we have a good chunk of listeners outside Bowden. So thank you so much for joining in. And yes, know that this is not just centered to like college students. No, this applies to literally everyone, honestly. Yeah, whether you're working or you're in college or in high school, these principles still apply because the college life and like high school life have similarities. They also have similarities like with working in like an office setting and all of that. There are many things that you can apply to. So thank you for joining in, and I hope to see you. Oh, I hope that you tune in to the next episode. Bye.
Bye, and thank you, Ruth.
All right, we'll see you guys. Don't forget to share and send in your comments, your stories, and anything you have to share with us. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.